Hello, everyone. It's another edition of Content Evolution's New World, and delighted to have you with us. My co-host Willie Yam is here. He was deeply in silhouette in video, so we're delighted to just have him with us. Willie, do we find you on the East Coast or West Coast of the U.S. today?
I'm in West Coast right now in LA. Nice, beautiful weather here. So I'm going to enjoy it for the next few days before I return to Hong Kong.
Wow.
But then, yeah, it will be a different time zone then. Yeah.
Okay. Is it getting cold enough in Hong Kong to support any kind of interesting weather?
Yes, I will when I return. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to getting a weather forecast, all right, from you. Before I introduce Kyle, Willie, with all of the visibility that FTX has brought to the world, I might suggest that we try to find a time for not presenting, but just a group discussion about what happened, all right, and why that has been a pivotal moment, and try to get that on the calendar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, for this topic, I think none other, my sister, Cindy Rentala, who's on the call right now, will be a perfect, expert in this area. She has been involved in the crypto space for some time now, and she came from Visa and American Express previously, and then she has been involved with a crypto in the payment space. But overall, I think that crypto is a space that she has been working very closely. Maybe Cindy, you can say a couple words before.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you all. I met Kevin previously and invited to join this team. So yes, I've been in the payment space for a couple decades, ex-Amex, ex-Visa. I got into the crypto and blockchain space since 2017, but I actually got exposed to it 2015, but got serious in 2017. I left Visa 2020 during the pandemic to really focus on the space. So currently I'm a strategic advisor and also a strategic investor in the space. I advise a range of Web3 startups, mostly Web3. It started with Web2, but then slowly, because my work in the space, more startups and founders came to me from the Web3. So the range of use cases I cover are, like Willie said, payment, because my roots, and fintech. But also lately, a lot of startups are in the ag tech space, Web3 advertising company, marketing agencies, data science company, and I think the common themes are probably infrastructure in the Web3 space. So I have to separate, cryptocurrency from the project that you are, building. So cryptocurrency is, FTX of the world. You guys heard a lot about. We can table that for another discussion. But a lot of projects are still alive, and well. The founders are still building. It's a much challenging environment right now, but the technology has many applications. I'm happy to share all that.
Well, that's great.
Another conversation.
So we'll get that scheduled, Cindy. And Willie, thank you for introducing Cindy to us and for the Yam family making such valuable contributions to New World. So now on to Web3 reminds me of the opening of the satire movie Airplane. It's like, now arriving Web3, Web4, Web5, Web6, right? There's no end, right, to the number of versions of the web that we could have. So I'm going to turn the clock back to the fall of 1995, all right? And this is the directory for the New York New Media Association, all right? When the web was young, Kyle was one of the early innovators. He was the creator of agency.com, the very first online advertising agency that later sold to Omnicom. He is I've enjoyed collaborating with him. He's a theater major, so he's a thespian, a playwright. After he sold agency.com, he was involved with a lot of dabbling in Invention Asylum, and then started Storyvine. All right, one of the things that he dabbled with and imagined, and then finally landed on the right client need and technology need that has allowed him to create this patented system that he is making available. But that's not why he's here. He's dabbling again. Okay. And he is involved, and he's going to show you what he has discovered in this new world of applying technology into the art space. All right. And some of the implications that he and I have talked about, and I said, oh, you got to get onto nuWorld. So I'm going to turn it over to Kyle, an imaginative fellow and a person that I've enjoyed collaborating with for over a decade now. Kyle?
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, in full disclosure, Kevin is an advisor to Storyvine, so everything we're doing wrong, he's been there every week telling us how to do it,
And he's finding good space in using Storyvine for selling things. All right. So I think we have finally found the sweet spot provided by the vacuum of COVID. All right. So
yeah, exactly.
Keep going, buddy.
I know, right? We're a decade in and we're finally an overnight success. It took a black swan event to do it, but okay. So I'll give you just a little bit of background about how I discovered what I discovered, and then here's my intent. My intent is to really quickly get through this. I'm happy to dig deeper in anything I show you, but I'm going to kind of machine gun through my discovery process, and just sort of tell you what I've discovered. This journey actually began, sorry, I've got an app is requesting to clean up my hard drive. It's done it twice now, so stop. Automation is not all good, but
right. We'll
talk today about automation. But my journey actually began just a little over a year ago in the crypto and NFT space. Long story, I ended up getting airdropped some large amount of crypto coins that let me play in the space. And I ended up getting involved in a project that was very, very creative. It was effectively a digital scavenger hunt. And if you did it well, you got access to this community, you got free NFTs. They ended up being very valuable. My mind was open to crypto and NFT, and that felt incredibly transformative to me. And I think Kevin and I are on sort of different sides of the point of view on that. I still think it's really huge, but because crypto has done what it's done and the markets have done what they've done, that world has kind of gone a bit dark. I think some of the high-end NFT things are actually starting to make an independent comeback right now, which is really interesting. But as I was part of this large NFT community, which was focused on Web3 gaming and things like that, it's a project called Neo Tokyo. You can see videos on it out there. But one of the members of that community created a project called Pixel Mind, which I'll talk about in a second, which is an AI generative art project with a Web3 layer on it. So you can generate art in this system, and you can even mint NFTs out of it. So that's sort of how I got introduced to it, and I'll walk you through that. And then I kind of went away for a while. Like, part of my experience with these AI generative tools is when you first start using them, they're absolutely mind-blowing. And then they very quickly sort of get into, like, the new Christmas present, where it was really exciting for a while. And then you quickly sort of get into this, okay, but what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with it, right? So it went away for 6 months. And then I just started seeing more and more and hearing more and more people talk about it. And I thought, okay, it's like, in 1994, when I got into the web stuff and did Urban Desires and agency.com, like some of the things that kept knocking me in the head is, you know, I'd hear about this internet and this World Wide Web thing, and then a bus would go by with a Wired, you know, Wired magazine, you know, poster on the side of it, or a Mondo 2000. So it was like, you know, the world keeps telling me, you know, go look in this area. So I feel like the same thing is happening there with these AI tools. So I started digging in. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to walk you through a bit of my journey. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a tool called Futurepedia, which is it's a directory of AI tools. And if you look at this list here, there are 344 tools listed in this directory. Last week, there were 309. Like, the speed with which these tools are being generated is astounding. So there's text generation tools, there's image generation tools, there's marketing automation tools, there's design tools, there's assistants, there's audio and music tools, there's coding tools where these AI tools are going to be able to, you know, write code or assist you in writing code, video, speech, avatar. So lots of different categories. But the point is, it's moving very, very quickly. I'm gonna demo some of the things that are not image related, but just to sort of give you a sense of how some of this stuff works if you haven't been digging into it. They're mind-blowing. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. Okay. The first one I'm gonna show you is something, this is from a company called OpenAI, and they're the ones that created DALL-E, which is one of the image generation tools. They're also the ones that have created this large language model called GPT-3, which is the way this stuff works, if you don't know, is this is one of my big insights about AI and why I think this is significant. The way I think about computing up to machine learning is that you take data, you put it in a bucket, right? You put it in some sort of storage device, then you pull that data out of the storage device and you compute, you run functions on it, right? So if it's an image, you might pull the image out of your camera, put it into Photoshop and run a filter on it. So it's very much data in, data out, process the data, put the data back in. This AI stuff is, let's take all of the things we know about writing, for example, and throw them into this machine learning model. And what it's not doing, which until I was deep in it, this didn't click. What it's not doing is copying and pasting words out of that giant model that it learned. What it's doing is trying to understand what you asked for, and based on what it knows, generate something new. So it's authoring new things. So this is a language model, and I've got some prompts here that I wrote yesterday that came up with interesting things. So this first prompt is, write a thesis of a dissertation on the impact of AI generative tools over the next 5 years, right? So if I want to talk about what I'm talking about, let's see what GPT-3 can come up with. So I hit submit, and it writes me the thesis of a dissertation. This dissertation will explore the potential impact of artificial intelligence, AI, generative tools over the next 5 years on the creative industries, focusing on the effects of the increased availability and accessibility of AI technology on the production of art, music, and entertainment. The combination of qualitative and quantitative research, this dissertation will analyze the current state, and it goes on and on, right? So actually plausible, usable language, right? Very interesting. But you can literally ask it anything. So this is the DaVinci 3 is kind of the third iteration of this GPT-3 model. There's apparently a GPT-4 model coming out in the next month or so that's supposed to be mind-blowing, but watch this. So write 10 original country song titles. Walking along the heartbreak road, fading memories of yesterday, my heart will always be true, dirt road to heaven, lonely cowboy on the prairie. Okay, let's take lonely cowboy on the prairie. and ask it to
Write lyrics.
write the lyrics for a country song called Lonely Cowboy on the Prairie. So it understands what a song is because it's writing the verse and the chorus. It's rhyming. So I'm a lonely cowboy on the prairie, no one to keep me company, just a horse and a campfire living day to day. I'm a nomad, always drifting, never settling down, no one to share my sorrows, no one to hear my sound. And you can literally just keep playing. So if you go to beta.openai.com/playground, you can do this. In fact, I've created, next Tuesday, I'm kicking off an AI artist salon, which I'll put information, I'll give to Kevin, he can share it out. But I've created an agenda document with links to a lot of these things that I'm showing you. But you start to see here, you know, if I were a songwriter, I could generate 100 songs in about 15 minutes that they might not be perfect, but like the speed of generation is insane. So that's the word space.
I might just add, Kyle, to what you just did, is GPT-3 is an example of a pre-trained model, right? Versus other machine learning, which you're just giving it all the data and asking it to figure out a reality, right? And organizing it. The GPT-3 has several trillion objects inside that is forming its taxonomy.
Yep.
So I just wanted everybody to know that it basically has read everything in Wikipedia. It read everything that is available in Google Books.
Yep.
So it's got a pretty big knowledge base and vocabulary, and GPT-4, I think, has hoovered in 10x more information. I think that's the advantage of GPT-4.
Yeah, it's dramatic. So here's another one in the music space called SoundDraw.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you've heard or played of this, but similarly, so again, do I need to sign in? I thought I was signed in. Sorry about this. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, hang on. I think I can just create music. Yeah, okay. So let's see. I can create, happy. Let's see. We'll do funk. Happy funk music. I need this music to be 1 minute and 30 for the project I'm working on. It can give me any tempo it wants. Create music. So again, this isn't copying and pasting clips from other songs. This is writing new music. So these are all 1 minute and 30 long, minute 33, minute 32, minute 29. So again, where my head goes is, if I'm a composer, this changes the game. If I own a stock house for stock music, what just happened, right? So one of the things that's hitting me is that industries, the way I'm thinking about it, any information industry is going to be dramatically impacted by this very, very quickly and without much warning. It's not like it's going to make news headlines. It's just like people are going to start buying less and less stock music and less stock photos and less. And if I need something like we just went through this at Storyvine, we were using stock music. And then at some point, something came up with copyrights and it became clear we had to own our own music. So this was a year ago. I went out and we hired on Fiverr a bunch of musicians that would write music for us that we could own. And it took us, I don't know, 3 months with the back and forths and the creatives and finding people we liked and this and that. With this tool, I wouldn't have gone through that exercise, right? I'd have found a tool that would give me rights in perpetuity. I hit the button, this music's good enough for me. So I think the impact's going to be pretty dramatic. Okay, so let me talk to you about AI image generation. Like I said, there's this project Pixel Mind that I got introduced to, and this is a Web3 project, but it's a tool that allows me. This is basically an interface layer sitting on top of one of the image generation models called Stable Diffusion. So one thing I can do, because I have access, is I can basically just do anything I want. So I can type in, generate, an image of, a dog on a pony in a rainforest, and it'll do that. So it's giving me access to the tools, and here's some of the things that I've built. But what this project is really about, the guy that created it is a guy named Adam Levine. And what Adam recognized, I've heard a couple of sessions where he's talked about his vision for this. And what he's talked about is, if we're entering a world where creative output is completely a commodity, how do you create rarity, right? And so one of the approaches that he's done with Pixel Mind is that he's creating AI generative projects in series. So each one of these little buttons is a different series that I can generate art within. So there's, epic fantasy. So if I go into here, this is more like Mad Libs than it is, like, I don't have complete control here. They've decided that anything that you do here is going to be generated in this kind of style, this sort of epic fantasy style, in this sort of aspect ratio, with this sort of look and feel. And if I go over to my creations here, like, here's the things that I've created, right? So, these crazy storms, and here's some airplanes flying around, and here's guys on horses. Now, to generate these, this was, I think, my prompt for this one of this woman lying in the stream was Ophelia drowning, right? So the only thing I typed in was Ophelia drowning, and it sort of picked the style and did all this. So this is allowing me as an artist to not have to figure out, well, how do I focus these tools, right? So this is giving me sort of a reason to be, which is kind of an interesting approach. The other thing that you'll notice is that over every one of these images, I can mint any one of these images to a collection. So these collections are, let's see, this series closes in 29 days, 11 hours, and 10 minutes. So these series are time gated. So once these series close, you won't be able to generate any more images in this specific, pattern. I can also take these images and I can mint them to my, my OpenSea wallet. So I can turn these into NFTs. Will they have any value? I don't know. They might or they might not. But this allows me to say, yeah, I created this image, in this series for Pixel Mind, on this date, and here's where I minted it. So whether or not this turns into anything, I think, for me is kind of irrelevant. What's interesting about this is he's recognizing that, the role of a tool like this and the role of creative input is really important, and how you focus it and how you frame this kind of stuff is going to make a big difference in the world. So let me just pause there for a second and see if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to kind of dig into this.
Kyle, it's Andrea. So when you mint it, so you own the rights to the NFT?
Yeah, I think of it like a digital collectible. So like, I printed like a baseball card that I have the only one of that baseball card, and I can prove that I own it. So if I go to OpenSea, I've done a lot of these, because the reason I've done a lot of these is I realized that, is it going? No. It doesn't, because I'm a member of this community, I get, I think, 2 free mints per series. And then I just won an internal contest, and now I can do 5 free mints per series. So let me show you my profile here. He's being very slow.
And does Pixel Mind get a royalty?
No, I own the rights to all of this stuff.
So they don't get any share of it,
No,
even though you're using their background.
yeah, that's part of the,
You pay for the service.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
once you, okay, I got it.
Yeah, in this case, I paid for an NFT, and because I have the NFT, so all of these images here are now NFTs that are part of. So you can see this one is monster portrait. I'll do one of these really disturbing ones. Why not? Oops. So this is the collection of all the monster portraits that everyone else has done. But if I go into mine, you know, here's the details of it. This is NFT number 50 in this series monster portrait. Here's the prompt that I used to make it, a serial killer monster named Dexter. So this allows me to, yeah, actually own the artwork that I created. Now, I could potentially turn these into printed pieces, you know, do mugs and t-shirts and things like that. I could potentially open an art gallery where people could buy these and trade them. Like, depending on what Pixel Mind does with this, if they, you know, get into the art community, they might do things like that. Okay. So does that answer your question, Andrea? Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so did you want other questions, Kyle, or did you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this wherever, and I'll just show you sort of where I want, like the project I'm working on now, but I'm happy to take this anywhere you want.
Okay.
Kyle,
Matt, did you have a question?
Um,
Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Kyle, and again, you had started some of this search in response to a copyright question, and I'm wondering where the case law is relative to some of these now, you know, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6th picture on the top line looks a lot like a Jack Vitriano painting. How has this been tested relative to copyright law?
Listen, I don't think it has. I think we are in, I think we are in very deep waters here from copyright and trademark. Stable Diffusion. So Stability is the company that created this model called Stable Diffusion. They're a year-old company. Their seed round was $101 million. They've open sourced all of their models. They just released Stable Diffusion 2.0. And one of the things that they did in Stable Diffusion 2.0, by default, they pulled out not safe for work images, famous people, and known artists. So I think they are trying to get ahead of getting sued by known artists. Now, I'm going to take a little detour here. This is not a perfect, this is not a perfect technical description, but here's kind of how this AI stuff works. So there's two models that the AI image generation, there's two models that are working in concert. The first one is the language model. So you type into the system, I want an epic portrait of a cat or whatever it is, right? And then I might want it in the style of famous artist here, right? Or I want, you know, a picture of a cat that looks like Nicolas Cage in the style of famous artist here. I think where people's heads are, and this goes back to the big insight I had, this is not copying and pasting elements of that artist's work and compositing them together. What the system is doing is it says, okay, in your thing, you asked for a cat. I know these are all cats. You also ask for epic portrait. These are a bunch of epic portraits, and you know they've got all these other tags on them, right? So they're these very, you know, complex models. And then what it does is it goes and it deselects all the stuff that doesn't match all of the criteria you gave it. So it might have pieces of art from your artist in here. It might have, you know, famous photos of cats from Annie Leibovitz. It might have, you know, who knows what's in there. And then the way the system works is it generates an image with random noise in it. And then it looks at that random noise and it says, based on the description that I understand and based on the images I've selected out of, you know, the subset of images, let me denoise that image once, twice, up to 50, 60, 80 times, whatever it is. And then you end up with this final image. So it is literally generating this thing out of nothing. So I don't know where the difference is. If I'm an artist that does a painting in the style of Andy Warhol or Keith Haring, am I infringing his copyright because I'm doing it in the style of? I don't know. Could an artist actually say, well, that looks like my work, you're infringing on my trademark, but it also has elements of some other artist in it there. So does it really? I think we're in very deep waters. I don't think it's been tested at all.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So now the project that I'm working on, this goes into very much silly land, but it's been really important for me to do. So as I started playing with these tools and I moved out of the Pixel Mind playground, which was this kind of Mad Libs thing where you're being guided how to do it. I said, let me learn these tools. And I installed them and, started figuring all this stuff out. It is very, very complicated right now. Like if I want to generate my own images, I've got to, go on GitHub and download scripts and run those scripts and get a Google Colab with a GPU. Like this is very much like the early days of the web where nobody knew what HTML was, nobody knew what these things were. And if you sort of geeked out enough, you could put together something that looked kind of like a page that you could share with someone else. The difference here is the output is so dramatically more sophisticated. That's why I think this is different. But what ended up happening was I got really overwhelmed with the amount of things it was generating and the amount of ideas it was sort of pushing into my head. And I've got ADD, like I love moving fast. I love having ideas pushed in my head. And it literally like exhausted me because honest to God, every time I would do a prompt, these images would come up. I'm like, oh my God, I've always wanted to be able to express myself that way. And it was just like, there were so many rabbit holes that I literally couldn't figure out where to focus. So then I thought, okay, I've been on the planet long enough. I know how to handle this. Like you narrow your focus. So what I said is, well, how might I use this? So about a month and a half ago, a new tool came out called Dream Booth, which sits on top of Stable Diffusion. There's these different models. There's Midjourney, there's DALL-E, there's Stable Diffusion that make these images. So in the Stable Diffusion world, someone came out with this tool called Dream Booth. And what Dream Booth allowed you to do was basically add to the model, right? Because I'm not famous, if you type in Kyle Shannon, the model doesn't know who I am. So it just gives you something random. What this Dream Booth thing did was said, I can upload pictures of me and I can tag that Kyle Shannon. And now the system will understand who I am, like what I look like. And so I can now start to put me in all these crazy scenes. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And as I was generating these things, I was like, oh, these are kind of like these perverse self-portraits. So I just started, every time it generated something that I thought was kind of interesting, I would just throw it into my, my photos library. So here's these things that, like this one kind of looks like me. And it looks like me when I was a little younger and had a little less weight and I'm a lot more hip, but that was kind of me. And then this one, I can see me in that, but that's terrifying. Like all of a sudden, this is a different thing. And so I now have 1,000 of these images in my in my photos library that I've generated in the past 2 weeks in kind of my spare time, like while I'm watching TV. I just generate images. If I like them, I drag them over here. And so this is kind of cool. And what hit me here was, well, this is what I felt was I'm living vicariously through the lives of these versions of me that I never got to live. Like I actually had this emotional kind of visceral, like, this is like what if I were a space captain, or what if I were some crazy Gandalf sort of, what if I led that kind of life? And so that led me to come up with this project called Kyle Shannon Dreams. And what this is it started on Instagram. And, these are just all of the me's that I've decided to put into this project. But the very first one is the Genesis guy, this guy. And I decided to write these little short stories about who these people were. So it begins. There was a time until very recently where you had to live life to experience it. That time has passed. I now lead a life beyond explanation. I am immersed in a dreamscape so grand it defies all logic. These images are the artifacts of my existence. Welcome to my life. Welcome to my dream. So this is the kickoff thing that sort of, what he says here is, we now get to be all these other people. So welcome, here's all these other people. And so what I did was, found an image like, this nerdy looking Star Wars dude. And, he's a guy that went to Comic-Con. I've been coming to the con since 1987. And he's like a nerd. And let's see, this guy, they call me the cabbage impresario of Wisconsin. He's like the cabbage dude, right? So I've been having fun writing these things. What it's allowed me to do is way more deeply understand the speed and impact. Here's me as a Ken doll. And so he's actually the replacement for Ken. So I wrote his story like someone asked him about Ken, and he's trying to be magnanimous about, Ken, but he's a little jealous of him. The speed with which you can generate this work and put projects in the world that are of a professional level is astounding. So this was the initial thing. And then I thought, well, I have a degree in acting and I know a little bit about video production. Why don't I take these images and turn those into videos? And so I have not used TikTok before, and I asked as many young people as I could, and no one would show me how to use the stupid thing, and it's really complicated. So one night I just did a 4-hour just deep dive and figured it out. And so now the extension of this is creating these video versions of the of these stories. Let's see.
And so it begins. There was a time, until very recently, where you had to live life to experience it. That time has passed. I now lead a life beyond explanation. I am immersed in a dreamscape so grand it defies all logic. These images are the artifacts of my existence. Welcome to my life. Welcome to my dream.
Right.
Kyle, that's
Yeah.
good. You've got some questions that are floating up.
Yep.
So Jim Sporer has asked some questions in chat, and then Mike has his hand up. So let's go to Jim and then to Mike.
Great.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for sharing this. I was wondering whether it was really truly open source or just open code, but I did a little searching while you were working, and it does look like it's actually open source, so people can fork it, make copies,
Yep.
do all kinds of stuff. So
And
that's great.
It is astounding. If you go to the Reddits, the subreddits for Stable Diffusion, the minute anything comes out, the community pounces on it, and they create these notebooks where people that know Python, put these notebooks together. So you don't need to know programming to do it. You need to be geeky enough to figure some of this stuff out. But the speed with which this stuff is happening, like 2 months ago, it required like 4 massive GPUs to do this stuff. And then the community sort of whittled that down. You could do it on 1 GPU, and then you could do it on like a local GPU. And now you can do it. If you have an M1 Mac, you can run Stable Diffusion in a thing called, I forget what it's called, but there's a Mac version that you can run this stuff just locally. So you can either run it on free environments that they host, you can run it on co-hosted environments like Google Colab, or you can run it truly locally where you're doing all this stuff on your local machine. So yeah, it's, and that's, Stability is a for-profit company, but they decided to open source this stuff as a kind of strategic advantage, which I think is really smart because the community is just pouncing on this stuff. And like that Dream Booth thing I talked about, what the community's doing is they're taking styles of artists that they like Pixar, characters from Pixar, and they'll create a dream booth model and then give that out to the community. So the whole question about legal and copyright, like Disney's going to be all over this, right? But who are you going to sue, right? This stuff is like, once these models are done, and because it's all this sort of originally created derivatives, I don't know how you I don't think you can police it. I think what you'll end up seeing is things like, here's the official Pixar model, that if you want to do a Pixar thing, you do it with this model and they will get a cut of anything that's generated. Like, I think we'll start to see things like that where you'll see official models, but I think there's going to be a whole ecosystem of, rogue models out there. I feel like at this point, the genie's already out of the bottle.
So Kyle, I think I have the title for your keynote here, which is Creative Destruction or Destruction of Creative.
Yeah, well, okay, so here's some of my big insights. Let's see. The speed is incomprehensible. Stability is less than a year old. Stable diffusion's been out in the world since August, right? We're getting this level of sophistication from technology that's less than a year old and has been in public hands for a couple of months. So if I just play my, what's it going to be like 3 years from now? It's hard to comprehend. The immediate place that I went is to where you went, Kevin, which is this absolutely decimates the creative arts. I'm not there anymore, but I think it absolutely fundamentally transforms the creative arts, and where the center of power is going to be obliterated. And here's what I mean by that. I think what becomes more important, there's a thing in this world called prompt crafting, where being able to ask these machines for what you want is the ultimate skill. And it's not just the ability to ask for it, it's the ability to ask for it and then curate it into a project. So this Kyle Shannon Dreams, I've got 1,000 images over in my photo library. I've got 60 or 70 here that I've written stories for, right? So the journey from ideation to focus to curation, I think that starts to become the superpower in this new economy, in this new world. And I don't think it's just with creatives. I think this is, if you look at what Google did, this protein folding AI that created 400,000 predictions of how these proteins fold in 2 days, where it took them, I think, 3 or 4 months to do one of them, with traditional means. Okay, so that all of a sudden means, scientists don't need to learn how to predict protein folding models. They need to learn how to wrangle these tools. So I think something about learning how to use the tools, learning how to do the prompt crafting is really important. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Mike had his hand up, and Mike, please join our conversation.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, Kyle, how are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Hey, one thing I was curious with a couple of those, a former colleague at Gartner's actually working on a book around generative AI. Obviously, for that audience, it's aimed at advertising and marketing applications. But I was curious with those tools, there will be a huge throwdown in copyright. I just don't think it'll be a very long one. I think it'll be very short, because depending on to some degree how you answer this, is there some sort of a watermark that identifies each one of these iterations or these things that you've created? In other words, that says this was created by Kyle, by our engine, by Kyle on this date, time?
The original images that are generated out of Stable Diffusion contain all the metadata that includes that stuff, but there's no reason someone won't write a tool that will anonymize it. We're seeing, I think it's iStock, one of the big stock houses just said, hey, we're not going to include AI art in our stock thing. Right now, for the most part, you can tell if something's AI generated. I think a year or two from now, you're not going to be able to. So
I think that, but in the end, right, if I'm a brand or I'm using this, or I'm somebody even like yourself using it for your company, as long as there's some immutable thing that can identify an iteration you're using for commercial purposes, that's kind of the end of the copyright thing, right? I mean, because in the end, what's happened for so many years when I was covering a lot of these issues at Gartner around digital, around music, movies, etc., right, was being able to create the perfect master, right, which is what all the rights holders were terrified. And here, you're creating a unique individual thing. Sure, code or somebody could use a tool to recreate it, but what it's really going to do is we got distracted in a lot of these discussions with copyright about property rights, etc. But I think what I was thinking as you were showing some of these, it's going to focus everything back to the basic fork, right? In the question you get asked in a copyright case is, is this a new idea, or is this just an expression of an old idea of an existing one? And I think that's what I was thinking as you were showing, is like, we're going to just go straight back to the root question with most copyright disputes.
I think this dramatically accelerates the conversation about the role of copyright, right?
Yeah.
Like shifting things to be able to digitally reproduce something accelerated that conversation. Like, why are we using, a model from the 1800s when printing was scarce in this digital world? Well, we've kind of morphed our heads around that. I don't know how you do it in this world. What I'm looking at here is a site called Lexica. So all of these images are AI generated. Yep. I can take any one of these images, and if I click on it, here's the prompt that was used to create it. Here's all the variations that are just sitting in this database of that prompt. I can now take that prompt and I can add my name to this, or I can say, give me R2D2 in this style. So I think the acceleration of derivative works is going to be so profound that I almost think that copyright becomes irrelevant. And let me give you another example. So I've already seen someone has taken the core scenes out of Star Wars, just the stills, and they've re-rendered them with other characters in other artist styles. I don't think we're that many years away from seeing complete rebuilds of Star Wars in a new style. Let me see Star Wars in the Simpsons style, where Homer plays Luke and including voices. So then which is there an original work there? Like, how do you call it back? And when this stuff can be dynamically generated, where you're not just taking one artist who's decided to do this, but now me as Kyle Shannon can go, I want to see The Godfather, as an anime, and I can just watch that on my own dynamically in real time. Who owns, so again, I think you get back to people having the rights to their intellectual property will sort of live in these models, but the derivative works that are created from them, I feel like, just become completely commoditized. I don't know how you chase it down.
So Kyle, a question. During the period that this becomes, we'll say, popular, does that stifle original creation because everything is simply derivative remakes of old stuff? Do you go into a loop where it actually stifles creativity of the other type?
I mean, look at these images of me, like me in quote marks here.
I got that.
Like, I think, like, it dramatically amplifies the creativity. Like, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see kinds of creative executions we couldn't have imagined. Like, a 14-year-old kid is going to do a 2-hour feature film that's going to look like it was done in Hollywood over a weekend. Like, and so I think there's just going to be this proliferation of work that, again, where my head goes is, where's the power center? Right now, the power center is whoever's got enough money to hire the resources that can execute on this. So I need a good creative director. I need a world-class director. I need a world-class composer. I need a cinematographer. I need this, I need that. Well, if I'm now just in an independent agency in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I can craft, you know, that kind of quality from my desk with no money at maybe 90% of the quality of what I could get from the big agency, where's the center of power now? It's just dramatically shifted, right? And if I'm that guy in New York that's really good at this prompt crafting stuff, I might be able to deliver agency quality work at 1/10 of the price.
Okay.
So,
Well,
so for me, I think
mean,
creativity explodes. I think where the power center is, it is completely unpredictable at this point.
because there's,
Right.
Kyle, there's no limit on the number of signals I can use for a prompt, right? Could I actually use a recording of something as a prompt saying, hey, I need a, you know, music bed for my 3-minute product video in the, you know, as inspired by this P-Funk, you know, track from 1972.
Yeah, actually, one of the visions I have for a product right now is the ability to put a prompt into the machine and then say, generate an image from this, generate a song from this, generate a story of this,
Yep.
right? So again, we're so early. All these tools, you know, all these, whatever it is, 344 tools. Have they added one since we've been talking? No. All these 344 tools are all these discrete things right now. These are going to get rolled together into some sort of interface where, yeah, I think the guy from PixelMind, Adam Levine, that started PixelMind, he said he believes that within 5 years, the technology will exist where you could be in an auditorium where someone's standing at the front of the auditorium describing a movie that's rendering in real time behind them. Like, okay, what does that mean? Like, oh my God, right? Like that's like,
Right.
and like what I'm doing right now with Kyle Shannon Dreams is I'm just kind of using this image generation as a proxy for any other AI tool sort of down the line. Right, from academia to, you know, scientific research to creative arts. So I'm focused on the creative arts because I kind of know the world. But I think if you sort of take that, like what this is doing with images, and just sort of blow that out across every other information technology industry, my very strong instinct is the effects are going to be as profound in every other industry.
Okay. As we discussed before this call, Kyle, you know, one of the things I take away is that, at least in the creative world, that the creative brief, you know, what do you want to create and what do you want to ask the tools to do becomes primary.
Yep.
It becomes the initial impulse for what the tools can then deliver to you. You have to be able to become expert at that, in the same way that coding isn't as important going forward as system architecture is. You have to be able to describe what you want the system to do.
Yeah, here's the phase we're rolling out of. I forget where I heard this, but this was a really good metaphor for me. We're coming out of the phase where you need to be a large data scientist to be able to play in this space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what the metaphor was you don't need to understand how to engineer and build a car. What you need to learn right now is how to drive. And think of this stuff as like power steering for your brain, right? So we need to learn what it means to drive in this new world. We need to learn these tools, and these tools are like power steering. So we go from walking to driving in an F1 car. Well, driving an F1 car, you need a lot of skills to drive an F1 car, right? You don't need to be the engineer to do it, but you need to know how to drive really well. I think that's the kind of shift this is not like carriage to horseless carriage. This is like walking to F1 race car.
Got it. We have a comment and potentially a question from Cindy Rentala. Cindy?
Yes, this is fascinating. I think you answered my first part of the questions about the trends and what this mean for artists, and their work. But part two of my question, it sounds like this truly democratized creativity. Like you don't have to be a great artist to generate art anymore. But does it mean that it makes truly original art more valuable? Like, because
think
it
it does.
becomes so accessible, right? This derivative art, so accessible. But then if you are true trend-setting artist using a medium, maybe even 2D versus 3D, and you create truly original art in certain style, that will become even more valuable from art world standpoint.
I think from the art world standpoint, it will. However, I think it will be harder to compete for attention.
Mhm.
And the ability to, if you look at just the different styles of art here, I've got a particular point of view as a photographer, for example,
Yep.
that some of this stuff is so far, like this image, I think is just beautiful.
Yeah.
That is so far outside of anything I would have ever conceived. But now that I've seen that, I could see myself running down a rabbit hole just exploring this. So I think what you might
Yeah.
see is artists dramatically expanding their palette, their creative point of view, because they're inspired by all this stuff. So I think original artwork, and that's why Pixelmind is doing the NFTs. They're saying, okay, once I lock this thing down in a series, that becomes more rare. So
Mhm.
create rarity in this world of overabundance. I think it's a critical issue. I think it will become more important, but I think there's just going to be such an explosion of creativity. Like, I don't know how you compete for attention in this new world.
Can I also ask a follow-up question? Is that what would you advise the future generation, the next artists who are going to art school? You talk about, learn how to drive versus building the engine.
Yeah.
But because some of them are doing UI, UX, some of them are doing digital graphic design, all of that might be gone.
I think all of the tactical stuff is gone. I think from coding to image generation to audio to animation effects, I think all of it is gone. Like this is the difference between, in 1897, you needed to know how to write down a math formula on paper and add shit up. You don't need to know that anymore. We still teach the fundamentals so you understand how you're using computers to do mathematical functions, but you don't need to do that. I think we're in that exact same place. So my advice would be, go as far up the strategic chain as you can. Get out of the tactics, because the tactics are now commodified. Those people that can be multidisciplinary, conceptual creatives with a strong point of view that can wrangle these tools quickly, they're going to be the super players in this new world. So,
and that goes with music, photography, and anything,
Everything.
what we define as art.
Everything.
Video production.
If I'm I'm doing this AI artist salon, my co-organizer here is a 20-year photographer. She could take a photo she shot in 1990 of someone in a red dress standing on the stairs of the Met, and in this new world say, make that a man in a tuxedo, and have 10 different versions of it that look in her style.
Sure.
She doesn't need to do that shoot again, right? So yeah, I think every single discipline is obliterated at a tactical level. I think the strategic.
I think they get reformulated.
Yeah.
And this is somebody who grew up playing music and still does. I think you're right. The production side of the house, that's pretty much done. And I think, that world was changing 10 years ago I think Epidemic is probably one of the bigger stock guys, I think, for doing music. And I think they've transitioned to something close to an AI model. I think there's a level of things like for live performance and authenticity. I think the volume of art gets massively amplified.
Yeah.
What we decide to spend our time individually with or collectively,
I
think that still holds out, right? But it's back from a musician's perspective. It's like, not going to make $1 million off that thing in the studio. Better get back on the road, because now I'm competing with stuff, this stuff.
I think the value of that in-person thing is important. Hey, listen, I need to run. I'm late for a pitch I've got to be on. thank you for all your time. I'll send you information on the salon. We kick it off next Tuesday. It's going to be every 2 weeks if you want to, keep playing with this stuff. And I'll also send that Word document or the Google Docs document with all these links in it so you can play. So good talking to you all, but I do have to run.
Thank you, Kyle.
Kyle,
Great
thank you
stuff.
so much.
So-
Greatly appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.